let's reevaluate for the possibility of a post-DK Metcalf Seattle Seahawks. What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Happy Friday. We have made it to the end of the week, and free agency is only a few days away. Now, we don't have the luxury of feeling very confident about free agency at this moment. I'll just go ahead and acknowledge that. We do not have the luxury of knowing what route the team should take. We don't know where the team stands with what they have. We are just a few days away now. We don't know what's going on with DK. Well, we kind of know what's going on with DK Metcalf, right? We kind of do, but that doesn't mean we know what's going to happen now. We don't know what's going on with Geno Smith. I think we know what's going on with Uchenna Nwosu, but even that I'm not 100% sure on. And overall, we don't know what the plan is at this point. Before 2 days ago, when the trade request came down from Metcalf, or excuse me, 2 days ago, I had a pretty good idea of where things were headed. Now I don't. So making a video like this is a little bit trickier, because the thing to understand is how you hit free agency is affected and ultimately determined by what your approach is going to be for the upcoming season. And the Seahawks should be in one of two modes. Either they're going for it or they're gonna step back. If you're going for it, then you're aggressive. You get the best players you can. You spend a lot of money. You give out long-term contracts. You do things that you know you're going to regret later in an attempt to try to win now. And if you're taking a step back, you don't do any of those things. You get one-year deals. You sign cheap players. You sign players that might be coming at a discount. And you basically just try to get through the season the best that you can while making sure your future options remain open. You don't want to touch your cap space down the line. You want maximum flexibility for when you get to that season where you do go for it. So before the DK Metcalf trade request, I was pretty confident the team was going to go for it. Now I'm less confident. However, for the purposes of this video, we can still assume that the team plans to go for it in 2025. Even without Metcalf, even after a Metcalf trade, they're going to use the money with Metcalf and say, hey, this gives us more free agency dollars to spend. We're going to use this money on this and that and the other thing, and we're going to still go for it. They can do that. And it's not objectively wrong to do so. I will say it's going to be very hard, but I would not call it impossible. And that's kind of the key point here. When you trade DK Metcalf, even if you get a great return back on him, let's say you do get that first-round pick and third-round pick, there is a lot you have to get right if you want to build it up in one offseason. You have to hit most of your draft picks, and you can't waste free agency money. You need to get bang for your buck on everything you spend. It's doable. I've seen teams do it, but now it's one more thing you have to replace, and you have to replace it correctly. If you trade DK Metcalf, get that first-round pick, and then you spend that first-round pick on a wide receiver, well, some people might say, hey, you can replace DK Metcalf. Okay, just because you can doesn't mean you will. You could draft the equivalent of a Quentin Johnston or a Rashad Bateman. You could draft one of these guys that's been a big disappointment so far, and they could end up busting for you, at least in the first couple of years, and then you haven't replaced DK Metcalf. Just because you can doesn't mean you will. So understand the degree of difficulty goes up. That does not mean it goes to the point where it's impossible. And I want to reiterate, if the team decides to take a step back in 2025, I'm not really looking to get much of anything. I'm just trying to get through the season at that point. So let's do a free agency path, assuming that the Seattle Seahawks trade DK Metcalf, but they also want to go for it, right? Again, the alternative path isn't really worth breaking down because it would be it's not much to it. You just sign random guys that are cheap and short-term. All right, so, okay, we've traded DK Metcalf, path C. Let's go down some of my choices here. First, I am signing a veteran DK Metcalf replacement. somebody who's not going to be quite as expensive, somebody who's going to still offer some good things. There are a few different options out there. I went with Davante Adams, 2 years, 27 million. That's what Spotrac estimates. First year cap hit would be about 8.5 million, maybe a little bit more, but the point is that you're getting Davante Adams as your sort of Metcalf replacement, and you're not going over the top crazy with it. You're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. You are saving money here in the long term. You're just trying to replace his production with an older, not as talented anymore player. By the way, if you don't like Davante Adams, there are a bunch of other players you could do this with. Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper. There are veteran receivers out there that you can get, even a Cooper Kupp when he gets released inevitably. There are veteran receivers that you can get that are still going to cost a decent amount of money, but they're not going to be long-term weights like Metcalf, and they're still good. So if you don't like Adams, sub in Cooper, sub in Kupp, sub in Diggs. All right, next, what I'm doing is signing Teair Tart, 1 year, $5 million, nose tackle. Was really good for the Chargers last year, anchored their #1 defense, and that really helps ease the load on the nose tackle position for 2025. You probably need one more nose tackle at that point, but you can get him in the 5th or 6th round probably. You can sign him for the vet min. Maybe Cam Young will finally show up this season, who knows, but it's just taking care of something that you got to patch up in order to compete for 2025. Brandon Stevens would be the next guy I signed. This is like your veteran cornerback. Remember, this is a McDonald guy. Stevens played for the Ravens when McDonald was there, and Stevens played better with McDonald. 3 years, 25 million. First year cap it could probably get down to about 4 million if you wanted it to. And there, you've got a secondary that's pretty much ready to rock. You've got, for the moment, you still have Woolen. I'm still pretty amenable to trading him, but if you trade him, then he just slots right in there. And you've got Joby now, you've got Witherspoon, and you've still got maybe the opportunity to draft somebody. But if you keep Woolen, then you're feeling pretty good about your corner room right then. Stevens, Woolen, Witherspoon, Joby. Plus whatever you get out of Pritchett if he plays this year. Okay, so that's that. Then I'm getting Calais Campbell, 1 year, $3 million. At his age, I don't think he's going to get more than that, even though he deserves it based on his play. Just another guy on that defensive line to help ease the load on Big Cat and Murphy. There wouldn't be a lot of room available for him on this team, but I think there would be enough. And I think you can make it work in such a way that he gets to play like maybe 20 snaps a game, and he can be great in those 20 snaps a game. So I'm just increasing the depth on that defensive line. Tart and Campbell basically get you very close to where you need to be ready to rock on that side. Josh Palmer, I'm signing another receiver in free agency, 3 years, $13 million, $3 million cap hit that first year. I'm a fan of Josh Palmer. I think he's just perfect as the number 3 in the Kubiak offense. Adams is your number 1/number 2. JSN's your number 1/number 2. Depends on how you look at it, right? Adams is playing on the outside. JSN's your slot. JSN's probably better at this point, but I think you guys know how it's a little bit hard to parse all that kind of stuff out. So Josh Palmer's your number 3. He's the guy who doesn't play as much. Liked what he was doing with the Chargers. Impressed with what he did for the most part. Not going to be that expensive. And the fact that it's a multi-year deal means you can push the cap it out. You could probably get the initial cap it down to 2.5 if you really wanted to. So that would be a way to take complete care of the receiver room ahead of the actual draft. So Josh Palmer would be somebody I pick up in this scenario. And then I'm getting Lucas Patrick. 1 year, $2 million, should be very cheap. Veteran left guard, played under Kubiak in New Orleans, actually played fairly well last year. I'm not really signing him as a starter, though. I'm signing him as a bridge or backup. So if nothing else, he's going to be great veteran leadership in the locker room as a backup. He could kind of be Laken Tomlinson, except hopefully he doesn't play like Laken Tomlinson did. And honestly, hopefully he doesn't really play at all because he can be a backup. So you may have noticed that this path does not really include any offensive line spending. Basically, the idea here is that you do everything except the offensive line in free agency. So that way, when the draft hits, you can basically just focus on the offensive line. In this scenario, maybe we need a nose tackle, but it's not going to be that big of a deal. We've taken care of like the defensive line completely. Other than that, we don't really need an edge rusher that badly, and if we do, we can get one on the cheap. We've taken care of wide receiver. We've taken care of cornerback. Safety is good for now. In this scenario, we're re-signing Ernest Jones, so linebacker is good. The only thing that's really left that's a high priority is the offensive line. So spend your first couple picks on offensive linemen, and then as you get into like day 3, you can start thinking about, okay, where do we want to try to add on a little bit? Do we want to add another edge rusher? Do we want to find that, cheap day 3 nose tackle? Do we want to maybe try to find a new safety? And remember, in this scenario, we'll have an extra pick or 2 extra picks from the DK trade. In this scenario, we've acquired extra picks for Metcalf, so it's easier. We have more opportunities to find the right offensive linemen and bring them in with a pick. Now, there is risk involved here. Rookie offensive linemen make mistakes, even if they're really good. That's what being a rookie's all about. Lucas Patrick mitigates that a little bit, but it's not going to mitigate it completely. So this is definitely something that you do if you're willing to basically put your faith in mostly young offensive linemen. This scenario probably requires Christian Haynes to be a good player this year, which that can still happen. And it possibly requires somebody like an Anthony Bradford to come around as well. But it's still a viable path, and it frees you up to try to draft offensive linemen. Okay, I'm not going to be opposed to it. You're playing with fire here, but let's face it, every team plays with fire, whatever they do. You got to take some risk somewhere. So this is another path. It's not my favorite. This would be like your DK trade path, I guess. All right, I'm going to go and get out of here. See you guys later. Go Hawks. I'm sure there will be more videos later today. Should be on Twitch later as well. Everyone have a great day.